Woven, stitched, dyed, or quilted, textile art is made from fabric, thread, and fiber. It's tactile, physical, and deeply human, and has been used for thousands of years to tell stories, record history, and express identity. From West African kente cloth to Japanese sashiko embroidery, textiles have long been used to communicate culture and meaning. In many traditions, patterns hold power, symbols woven into cloth to signal family, status, and spirituality. Quilting, in particular, has a rich legacy in American art. At its core, it's an act of stitching together layers of fabric to create warmth, comfort, and often memory. But for many artists, in practice, quilting is often far more than practical. It's visual storytelling, history keeping, and an act of devotion. Contemporary textile artists continue in this spirit. In her 2024 work, Feeling It, Alice Ayers uses fabric collage, incorporating beads and shells to create her completed composition. Working with reclaimed materials, the work is completely hand-stitched. In it, we can see how her selection of evocative patterns almost makes the sonic palpable. Her work draws on African textile traditions, reinterpreting archival photographs with hand-cut cotton, velvet, and silk. The result is deeply layered both visually and culturally, and speak to the domestic and the personal in ways that transcend words. Technically, textile works can include piecing, applique, embroidery, dyeing, and even felting or weaving. Some are sewn by hand and others by industrial-grade machines. The materials, whether they're new bolts of fabric or salvaged scraps, carry their own stories, which the artist rearranges into something entirely new.
All right. Thank you for coming to this Zoom meeting. We're going to have you introduce yourself. What is your name and your profession, Miss Ayers?
All right. I'm Alice Aida Ayers. I prefer to go by Aida, and I am a textile artist and art educator. Been that for about pushing on 40 years now.
All
So,
right.
yeah, art is in my blood.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. It's been a pleasure looking at your work, seeing your textile works in conversation with other places, and show it has been something special. There's really a dialogue across mediums happening. I'm glad for this to be the first series of discussions that we are having in this Visual Symphony campaign. Question one. For someone who might be encountering your practice for the first time, just discovering your work, could you communicate what decision to pursue a professional practicing artist looked like for you, and how you arrived at textile works as a signature medium in your practice?
I love talking about my journey to where I am now with the art that I do. Like many of us, you probably included, I've been doing art all my life since I was a child. And for a lot of us that have made this a lifetime commitment, it started as children and it was, our place to go, our solace. This was what we needed. And I remember creating my first painting when I was about 12 years old, and it just progressed from there. So I actually started out as a painter, and then I dabbled with sculpture and enjoy mixed media. I love experimenting. Absolutely love it. I did a lot of work in handmade paper and recycled materials. I lived in Africa for over 2 decades, so there weren't a lot of materials. And what led me to textile was that there was fabric available. So there weren't paints, and there weren't kilns, and the type of things that we use in the Western world to create art. So fabric and textile was so readily available. So I started creating art with that. And for somebody who's interested in doing that, I think it just starts with an obsession with the material. And
Mhm.
I promise you, I am obsessed with fabric. It's really an addiction. I can't help but just, run my fingers over fabric and textiles, the textures, and then in my work, incorporating all of those different types of things to create an image is really exciting. So for someone pursuing that, it's always a matter of just getting excited about the material and, allowing that to take you on a journey.
All
And I
right.
have no idea if I answered your question.
As you continue to push the limits of that medium, could you share some of the challenges or considerations unique to working with quilting?
In my quilting process, I don't use a machine at all. So
Mhm.
everything that I do is hand stitched. So I think that has to be taken into consideration when doing this type of work. And the challenge is that it's very time consuming. So a piece could take me 4 months to finish. And that's, putting 8, 12 hours in a day. I mean, 40 to 60 hours a week. So it really is a full time commitment. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. The other challenge or consideration is, just approaching it for me, approaching it like it is a painting and figuring out just how to use these materials and different types of fabric and textile in the composition. So there are a lot of small, wonderful little challenges, and again, experimentation that goes into creating these pieces.
All right. The work featured in our Visual Symphony is a 2024 work entitled Feeling It. Can you speak to the role that music might play in facilitating or inspiring your making and how music as a subject functions as a subject matter in your practice?
Oh, I just got goosebumps thinking about music because, like a lot of artists, when we're making art, we put those jams on. And for me, I always fall back into the 60s and 70s kind of R&B groove and the blues and that guitar, and then I move on to kind of funk and I'm over here playing my air guitar as we're talking here, but that kind of music just kind of takes me, it elevates me and moves me into a realm of pleasure, and
Mhm.
maybe it's just nostalgia or memories, but I just kind of get into this groove, and yeah, it kind of determines the flow of, and the cool thing is it determines the type of fabric or the colors that I want to use in the composition, and whether I want to incorporate beading or just objects to really demonstrate how I want you to feel the music as a viewer. So yeah, music is key to creating art in my world, and using it as a subject matter. I love musicians. So I love a person, I love a brother on a bass. I love, a sister on a sax. I mean, I just love, I love the voice of Nina Simone, and I just want to, get that voice into the composition somehow. So yeah, it's oh, yeah, okay, it's important. Yeah, so I love this exhibition that's up with all of the music that's flowing in these images. It's so inspiring.
Yes. Um, if you had to choose a musical accompaniment for the works in this exhibition, what piece of music might that be?
The works in this exhibition are they're so varied and eclectic. So and I think the genre that would capture it most would be jazz, because there is so much movement and there's a lot of experimentation within this whole exhibition. So I think, yeah, I can't name a specific piece of music, but I think it would have to be kind of jazz.
All right. I definitely do that when I'm doing my illustration work. Music ranges from tightly structured genres like classical to improvisational jazz. And with your use of vibrant fabrics, I imagine, but with your use of vibrant fabrics, how do you carefully consider your composition? Where does that fall along the spectrum of your work?
Like I said before, music is so inspiring, and my musical taste is so eclectic. So I can't. classify my work as being influenced specifically by one genre because, for example, on my playlist, I mean, I could be listening to Puccini, and then all of a sudden I jump to Snow Allegra, and then from there I'm like Alicia Keys, and from her I'm at Patsy Cline. So I'm just like all over the place. I love all genres of music. So, excuse me, I think my work reflects that as well because it determines again, whether I dye the fabric myself or if I, cut out just pieces of a certain textile and include it in. Um, yeah. So music as a genre, music, I mean, music is music. You can find love in every kind of music. So when I am creating work and the music is on, it can jump from one genre to another, and it still, just affects me and it still transports me.
Both visual and sonic expressions like music or painting and sculpture draw from something universal, deeply human. In your view, what is it about music that and visual art that speak to similar emotional truths to the moment we find ourselves in?
Wow, that's a really good question. I mean, as humans, as from the beginning of time, if we think about what was there for us to communicate, it was visual art and it was music. It was, the drumming, it was the snapping. In visual, it was the painting, it was the drawing, it was line making. As human beings, we have such a beautiful universal connection that the arts create for us. If we allow ourselves to be engrossed in that beautiful world of art, we develop such a deep human connection with one another. So vital to our existence.
Yes, we are social creatures.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
depend on this. One of the gallery's considerations was how different practices could be in conversation. Are there any contemporary or even historical artists you feel your practice continues to be in conversation with?
I'm influenced by a lot of different type of art, and I have to say I'm more influenced by probably painting and sculpture than anything. Just recently, yesterday, I saw a David Driscoll exhibition. Phenomenal. And this brother had been around for a long time and worked with contemporaries like Jacob Lawrence and Romare Bearden way back, in the day. I mean, and the work was so phenomenal. The lines, the painting. So I think that my work is in conversation with that type of work. I think that because when I approach a piece of work, I look at it like it is a canvas, and I really approach it like it's a painting. And I'm just using fabric instead of paint to apply onto the surface. And so if I look at a piece of a painting or a collage, I can see and I'm influenced by that type of work in my own. And the only difference is that the medium is different. So if I have conversations with painters and with sculptors, and we approach the subject the same way, you start with a blank canvas and then you build on that. And while the materials themselves are very, very important in deciding on a composition, it's kind of the same. It is the same conversation. What is the story that I want to tell? Where am I taking this? How do I want to express myself? And how do I want the viewer to relate to this? So these are kind of conversations around my work with contemporaries and other artists.
No, right. As an artist that has spent years developing your craft and refining it, what are the challenges and questions that continue to invigorate your artistic practice? And what are you looking forward to?
Mm. I think one of the challenges that I face, even as long as I've been doing this, and I think a lot of young artists face the same thing, We always want to present our authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very challenging, because you don't want to create work. You don't want to do something that's been done over and over again. We're not here on this planet just to regurgitate the same story. We're here to create a new story. So the challenge is, how do I step forward to create that story, to tell that story, to communicate that story, so that the audience understands who I am as an artist and what my point of view is. And for all of us as artists, that's always a challenge when we approach that canvas, you know, and the first thing we're asking is, okay, what is this story I want to tell? How am I going to tell it? And then we decide the tools that are necessary to create that piece.
Yes. I love it when I get the chance to conceptualize and then throw my work out into the wild, and then people say, "Ooh, it's amazing. Ooh, ooh, how'd you even think of that? You spend hours thinking on something and it just comes and you just make it, try to breathe it to life." Um,
Yeah, and that right there, what you just said, that's it. Just creating something new, and yeah, a new point of view. Yeah, it is. And when somebody understands it, it's like, oh my gosh, yes, you get it. That's it.
all right. You hail from Albuquerque, New Mexico, originally and are currently based in El Paso, Texas, but over the years you have connected and contributed as an artist and educator in Mexico, Europe, and a range of countries in Africa. Could you speak of how much a bearing, if any, the material and sonic landscape of where you're making influenced your practice?
Mm. Travel has a huge impact on the work that I create. I do hail originally from Albuquerque. I am no longer in El Paso. And since then, I've been in Little Rock, and now I'm in Tennessee. So I move around a lot. I have a kind of nomadic life. But the biggest influence, I have to say, on the work are all the years that I did spend in Africa. And just it influenced me in the way that I see the world, in the way that I greet people, in the way that I give. The greatest lesson in my life that I learned living in a village in Zanzibar was that there's always enough for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that, just understanding and knowing that it really changes your perspective on the world, and just being a global person. Um, I still, in my work, I draw on my roots in Albuquerque. My grandma, she was a great big influence. She was the one who taught me how to sew when I was a child. And she's from Mexico. And so you will find that in my compositions, I always include a bit of Mexico. And then on my dad's side of the family, the African side, I always include something that is African. And that kind of makes up this American, and it's always in there. So traveling to different places and just exploring and learning, big influence on the work that I do.
All right. I'm trying to go there. I'm trying to go.
Oh, go, just do it.
In addition to being an instructor at Henderson State University, you've conducted residencies at over 250 schools, colleges, community centers, including several public artworks. Can you speak to how you see your role as an educator in relation to your studio practice?
As an educator, my belief is that we're here to share whatever that we have with other people. And the way I teach is absolutely a sharing process. So it doesn't matter to me if I'm at a university, a library, under a tree, or in the backyard. I don't care where I teach. I think it's important to share that not to force it on anybody, but if somebody wants it, I'm going to give it, you know? And so that's my philosophy about teaching, is just sharing all of the gifts that I have, the processes I know, techniques, whatever the person needs is what I love to teach. To date now, I think I've been to closer to 500 places. I just had a wonderful session just the other day. Somebody called and asked me to do a workshop, and it was for some young ladies, 12 to 14 years old, at a community center. And, so I set everything up and I let them sew for 2, 3 hours and just understand the beautiful communal process of sewing, that sewing circle. This is one thing in my process that's really important, is that we understand that we can create beautiful communities with something in common. We all have something in common from whatever walk of life or whatever place we hail from, and I think that this particular medium really brings people together in an educational setting.
All right. I've seen your work. It uses a lot of bold color. Personally, I have my own theory of art, which is dynamism. Dynamism. It's the use of bold color to attract the viewer and to tell a story. Do you use or intently use bold colors for your work to attract the viewer to tell your stories in these quilts and textiles?
I love color. The brighter, the bolder, the better.
Mhm.
I absolutely am obsessed with color. And that's one reason why I love fabric. I love color and I love pattern. So in the work, you see a whole lot of pattern as well. And I love when it is a bit in conflict. Um, again, speaking to living in Africa and the way that colors are put together, it's a very, very different process from the Western way of looking at color and the color wheel. So, for example, you might have a piece of fabric that is orange and it has this pink design on it. And then there's orange, and then there is green, but it's just all of these wonderful colors put together, and it's intoxicating. And so when I make a piece of work, I definitely am drawn to the color. But I think for most of it, it's very intuitive. The process that I use when picking color, I really rely on a feeling. I rely on my gut feeling. And if this feels what it's supposed to be, then that's what I use, whether it goes or not. I don't believe in matching, first of all. I always tell my students matching stifles creativity, because if you're always trying to match something, you're not letting your juices flow, so you've got to really just be very intuitive about choosing those colors. But I'm just drawn to bold, bright. Yeah.
Right. To speak briefly of the resonance and other aspects of your creative output, you've created 20 murals. How would your murals relate to your quilts and their tacticality?
Maybe the tactile.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, that's a cool question, because some of the murals that I've created were mosaic murals. So I use a lot of recycled materials like glass and tile, bottle caps, and even fabric that had been just old fabric, that you kind of scrunch up and then make it hard and put into the mural. Yeah. So the way that it relates is that, for example, like when you're attaching fabric to the surface for a quilt and you're sewing it, it has that same essence of putting pieces on a mural, putting tiles on a mural, and taking that plaster with your hand and running it around that tile, or putting that bottle cap in the cement. So it's that same beautiful tactile feeling that you get. One is hard and one is soft, but the feeling and the emotion that you pull from it is very, very similar.
Right. In a few short weeks, Fine Art is going to be celebrating their 37 years, dedicated to enduring and telling stories that all African art tells, African American African art tells, and in the emotional inheritance that it provides. If there is one thing you want someone new to your work to take away, what would it be?
I'd say I would love for them to walk away with a feeling of flow. It's so important in life as we move through life to allow ourselves to be in the flow of life. And when I look at a piece of art and it moves me, it's because it has taken me to a place where I feel like I can flow. I'm not fighting it, I'm moving with it. It's like a downstream river. So I would love for you to look at my work. And after you see it, for example, if you look at Feeling It and you see the expression on the brother's face as he's strumming, the strings of the guitar, I would love for it to put you into a flow, maybe bring a song into your head. And when you walk away, you remember it and you feel that song and you are in the flow.
What song would you personally like to see? Well, like what song do you feel when you made Feeling It? What is the one that stood out among all the ones that you listened to while you were in that mojo? What was the one?
I love it, in that mojo. Oh, I think I have to say it was Redemption Song, Bob Marley.
Mm,
Oh, pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ship. You know that one? Oh,
mm,
yeah, I think that's the one. When I look at that piece, and when I finish that piece, I always just, I have a little ceremony and I smudge the piece and, just, make sure that the positive energy is in there. And I remember touching that piece and feeling that, so that's the song for me. When I look at that in person or when I touch it, I know Garbo's like, don't touch. But when I touch it, I feel that. Yeah.
right. Well, that'll conclude this interview. Your work is alongside 10 other artists in this show that show a beautiful note to mark a milestone. Alice, thank you for so much for taking the time out of your day to come down here and talk with us at Hearne.
Okay, well, I appreciate it and I feel honored. And congratulations to Garbo for 37 years. She's done a phenomenal job. I have known her for all of those 37 years. So I appreciate the journey that she has been on, that she has gone through to get to this point. It's a blessing.
All right.